Well, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Block Island Residents Association, I'd like to welcome you all here. This is our fifth or sixth candidate night in which we have co-sponsored between the Block Island Residents Association and the Block Island Times. And we hope this will be an informative opportunity for you to get to know the candidates. A week from tomorrow, or a week from today, we'll be here making our decisions. So I'd like to turn it over to Fraser right now. Up here.
Yes. On behalf of Block Island Times, I want to welcome all of you tonight. I think this is the fifth time we have co-sponsored this event, and I think it's extremely important to the well-being of this community and the democratic process. So we're very pleased to be a part of it. Before we begin for the council session, which will begin in just a few minutes, if you have a question, if you raise your hand, Betty will give you a piece of paper that you can submit a written question on, and the questions will be collected and organized so that the two people posing the questions have a chance to consolidate so we're not repeating one question over and over again. But before we begin our candidate, council candidate forum, we're going to have a presentation by our two candidates for the General Assembly seat. The order of their speaking was decided through a coin toss, and each of them has 5 minutes to speak. They will not have an opportunity to answer your questions at this point, but after the session ends for the council candidates at 8:45, they will be available for a public forum for 15 minutes to answer questions. I want to say that we are going to very strictly adhere to the time constraints in order to make sure that every candidate has an opportunity to present their views and that you have an opportunity to hear questions posed to them. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Donna Walsh, who is the Democratic candidate for the seat in the General Assembly. Donna. The time over there will let you know when you have 1 minute, 30 seconds, and 10 seconds.
Before I start, don't time it. I never read a speech, but I'm going to do it because I have to adhere to 5 minutes, and I'm trying to do that. The best part of being your representative for the past 8 years have been my visits here. I have held community meetings to hear what's on your minds, and I have especially enjoyed recognizing the accomplishments of island residents. A highlight last October was the visit by the 4th grade students from the school who came over, and I think if there were some parents here, these students came in and we did a mock debate, and we actually had them voting and arguing and debating whether you should have school uniforms on Block Island. Well, needless to say, they voted down the uniforms, so you don't want to go there. I've also been over to meet with the Deer Task Force and worked with DEM to pass the necessary legislation for the deer cull. And last year, I met with the Chamber as well as North Lake Fibers to learn of their concerns. The Health Center has received legislative grants from Senator Sosnowski and I. And when United Healthcare canceled doctors in the Block Island network, Margaret called me as well as Sue, and we all put some pressure on United, and we had that changed. So we have actually had some impact on some of those issues. Senator Sosnowski and I have worked to ensure the passage of every piece of legislation the town council has sent over to us, with the exception of one piece. And that was in 2008 when you wanted an arts district on the island. And that simply did not pass, and it was not for lack of effort at that particular time. But this year, when I submitted the legislation, I didn't just submit it for Block Island, I submitted it for the whole state. So I was the sponsor of the making all towns arts districts all over this state. So we now have we have a sales tax exemption on all original art. And I think I remember Jesse Edwards calling me over the spring of last year and saying, are we going to get this through? Are we going to get this through? And yes, I'm really pleased to say with a lot of help from other artists and galleries around the state, we did get it through. Another thing that I would like to focus on is the tourism, because an arts legislation and because we're focusing on all arts and cultural issues, I think we have a chance to attract more tourists who spend more money if they're focused on arts and cultural activities. That seems to be a proven fact. They are coming and they will spend more money. But the problem is we need to actually market ourselves as the state of the arts. And with our piddly little $250,000 arts allocation or tourism allocation in the state budget, that doesn't do it. And I will be promoting that as well. I would also advocate for the passage of the $35 million arts and cultural bond issue that will be on the ballot. Small businesses are the backbone of our state economy, both here and in the state. And since 2011, I have sponsored legislation to adjust the minimum corporate tax. I have done it in several ways. First, I tried to eliminate it. Well, that was $25 million. We couldn't do that. Then I went to half that amount, cut it in half. But I think the best way to do it would be to put it on a graduated passage, that businesses that spend, or I want to say, have gross receipts, adjusted gross receipts of $250,000 would pay no minimum corporate tax, and they would go up based on that. It stands a better chance. I'm back to working on that because it would be revenue neutral and it would be a fairer way of doing things. Because of my environmental record, I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club and Clean Water Action. My bill to recycle, 30 seconds, good ways, was signed by the governor just this past week. I will continue my efforts to remove the 25,000 cesspools in the state, address issues relating to mining and extractive industries, and reintroduce a Marine Debris Reduction Act that focuses only on plastics this year. And I will continue that as on to the issue of ethics. I can't keep going this fast. I have the third highest good government rating in the General Assembly. Stop. I stopped. I thought I could do that.
We understand the constraints on the candidates to the time constraints, but believe me, we have a lot of ground to cover, and so we thank you. And let me remind you that the two General Assembly candidates will be available to close the council session at 8:45. So now I am very pleased to introduce Blake Filippi, who is the independent candidate for the General Assembly seat.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you to my opponent, Donald Walsh, the Block Island Times, and Byra. It's been a long campaign, and we talked about a lot of important issues. I've been really focusing my attentions on issues of public corruption and empowering small businesses in our state. And I feel that government has become an obstacle to the people in so many respects, whereas I think our government should act as an advocate for business, an advocate for personal liberties. Over the past 4 years, I was proud to serve on the New Shoreham Water and Sewers Commission as their solicitor. And I learned that when a group of dedicated people come together and try and enact good policy, a lot of changes can happen. And I'm proud of the work we did preserving public health and protecting our environment. I feel that on the state level, our government really just doesn't pay attention to Block Island. I think that, I look at a flyer that was sent out about me, and I feel that my opponent's trying to convince you that she understands more about Block Island than I do. I mean, I've never claimed that I'm out here 12 months a year. I've always said that I'm a seasonal resident. I'm out here 8 to 9 months a year. I believe that's substantially more than Donna Walsh has been out here. And I respect her years of service, I most certainly do. I feel that this week, things in this campaign got a little unnecessarily nasty. And I just want to address that for a moment because my opponent filed a Board of Elections complaint against me saying that I'm not a resident of Block Island. And I find this really unfortunate because instead of calling me up and saying, Blake, what evidence do you have that you are a resident of Block Island? I got in the mail a complaint that was filed against me with the Board of Elections citing some evidence that I have connections to Lincoln, Rhode Island. And I've always claimed I have connections to Lincoln, Rhode Island. I even say that on my campaign literature. I feel this was pretty unfair, and I think it takes us away from the issues. The evidence that was connected to the filing was actually in the possession of my opponent for the past few months, and it was dropped a week before the election. So I think that's unfortunate, and I just have to make a statement about that because it's been in the news. I dispute it entirely, and I look forward to talking about the issues. So let's get to them. Local issues. I just want to provide some examples of where I feel our state hasn't paid attention to Block Island and what I would have done differently. I believe that when our state airport corporation gave $900,000 to the competitor of our Lifeline, New England Airlines, that was an affront to us. Where were our representatives? If I was in office, I would have contacted the head of the airport corporation and said, don't you dare. But I just feel our representatives don't have their minds on Block Island. I think it was just completely off their radar. I think another example of that is a net metering bill that was going through the legislature last year. That continued to exempt BitCo beyond 3% of net metering. And no matter how you feel about net metering, reasonable minds can differ, but I think it's objectionable that we weren't consulted, that our representatives haven't come out here and held a public hearing before they decided on what happens to us. I promised that if elected, I'd be out here in January holding public forums as to whether net metering is the right policy or not. Next, the PUC. About 18 months ago, we had extensive hearings in front of the PUC for interstate navigation. And I think the island said loud and clear that we felt that we had inadequate access on the PUC. I believe that when you have a Lifeline service to a place like Block Island, we should have one of the seats. The council should be able to designate one person to serve as a member of the PUC. And finally, Corn Neck Road has been a big problem. I think that the state really let us down when it repaired it after Hurricane Sandy. It's already failing. If I was a representative at that time, I would have looked at the plans, called the DOT, and said this is completely inefficient, and it's not working, and it's already failing. I have 1 minute left, 30 seconds left actually, and I just want to say that I love this state, and I love our home, but I feel it's going in the wrong direction. Our children are leaving, our grandparents can't afford to live here. I want to make things more affordable. I want to have a stronger business climate so our kids don't have to leave and our parents don't have to leave. And one of the things that I want to do is eliminate the tax on Social Security income, like 44 other states have done. And I just want to make things better here. And I feel there's a lot of potential in Rhode Island that's just not utilized. So thank you very much. And
Thank you. Let me remind you that both the candidates will be available at 8:45 when the session ends to answer questions. Let me just go through a few of the procedures about the council questions. The questions themselves will be posed by Lars Trodson, editor of the Block Island Times, and Bill Penn, who is president of the Block Island Residents Association. And we're pleased to have Ben Martin as our timekeeper tonight. I'm sorry? Bud, sorry, Bud. As our timekeeper tonight, and he will keep everybody on schedule. All the candidates should know that they will receive updates as they answer the questions so they know how many minutes they have. The first part of the session will be each person at the table will be allowed a 2-minute opening statement. When the questions begin, The first person in order will be asked a question, and they have 1 minute to answer. And then everybody else on the panel has 30 seconds. Now, these are very strict time constraints only because we have 8 candidates and we have limited time. In terms of how these candidate seating was decided, this was random. We had a paper pulled from a hat to decide where people would sit, so it's totally random, pulled blind. And we are going to try to allow 1 minute for every candidate to have a closing statement. So I'm going to try very hard to work with our team of questioners and keep within the time constraints. If you have not already received a piece of the green paper to write your question, all you have to do is raise your hand and Betty will give you a piece of paper. When your question is ready, if you raise your hand, she will come and collect the question. They will be given to our panel that's posing the questions and sorted so that we don't repeat the same question over and over again. And the questions will be posed to the candidates. I'm asking everybody to speak very clearly because we are recording this and we'll be posting a video, everything going according to plan, on the BlockIslandTimes.com website. So you have an opportunity to listen to the debate and remind yourself what was said. You know, these are difficult choices that you're faced with, and they're not easy to make. I'm reminded that when Winston Churchill was a candidate in 1900, he went door-to-door canvassing, and things were going pretty well until he came to the house of a not particularly pleasant-sounding fellow. So Churchill introduced himself, and the fellow said, "Vote for you? Why, I'd rather vote for the devil." "I understand," replied Churchill, "but in case your friend is not running, may I count on your support?" All right. Alan McKay, your 2-minute opening statement.
Well, I don't think I can talk to that. For the people that don't know me, I think I'll just repeat some of the things that were in the paper itself. I've had a long history with the island since I was a kid, coming down in summers. I lived here year-round for probably a total of about 27 years. Started back in the 70s, in the late 70s. Mostly do construction out here. I've also run the Seabreeze Inn for several years. I think I'm just running. I think I'm a reasonable person that is looking to make a difference in terms of how things are run. I don't have any major problems with the way things are done now. I think we're in pretty good shape, for the most part. I think there are challenges that we want to face, but I don't think we're in terrible shape. I think that if we use the analogy of a ship, we're not sinking by any means. I think we just need to do course corrections here and there. That's all I would say.
Howell?
Well, I'm running for town council primarily because I was asked to. And I was also asked 2 years ago to run, and I ran then. So there's a lot of other things that I know a lot of people, including myself, might want to do on winter nights in the middle of a cold winter, but it's something of a civic duty. I'm also at a stage of my life and my career where I do have the time to do it now, so I thought that I'd give it a try. What do I think that we need to do as a council? Well, planning is one. I think we need a traffic plan, maybe first and foremost. We've been inundated with cars, and we need to find out how to address this. We can't let this continue. We have to find out what our infrastructure can hold and how we address this. We can't just allow a limited amount of cars here. That all boils down also to parking. Cars and parking. We know we've got a parking problem. We have to study traffic and parking. I think we need sidewalks all the way from Champlin's Marina to Old Harbor. We need to study a way to do that and get it done. It's been talked about for many years. Pedestrians are spilling out into the roads. The parking is clogging what little walkways they have on the side of the road. So we need a plan to solve this problem, and we need it quickly. Bike paths might not be a bad idea, but I'm not sure we have the actual real estate along the roads, but it should be looked into. I think we need more public information for our visitors. They're dropped off here and they really don't have much information. Whether it's a trifold brochure that's handed to them when they buy their tickets to come over here, whether it's a video on the ferries to give them the do's and the don'ts. Please don't walk in the road for your own safety. Please ride single file on your bicycles, wear your helmets, walk in the crosswalks, etc. People will be very appreciative, I think, of a little bit of information. That also goes along with just general information as how to get where. Go to an intersection, there's no signs on the signpost. Pardon me?
I'm going to have to call time.
That was 2 minutes.
I'll just remind you that Bud Martin is over there with the time. You can move to the center, if that's helpful. You can move, that's fine. Just as we go along, I want to remind you to please turn off your cell phones. Kevin Cost.
Thank you. Good evening. I think you all know who I am. Everyone reads the Block Island Times. Have you read the bios last week? The only updates since I took office are that my loving, incredibly supportive wife, Marley, is now retired from the Block Island School. Elder son, Charlie, is now a fire lieutenant in Narragansett, and younger son, Parker, is working in D.C. and attending Georgetown Law. I've built up, own, and manage a marine repair business, a small marina, and a bike and car rental business. I'm a bit of a workaholic, and I have to be dragged kicking and screaming on short vacations every year or two. I was elected to the town council 8 years ago, and I've served as a second warden for 2 of those years. This year, knowing that Kim Gaffett was be stepping down, I decided to run for first warden. Having been so involved in many critical issues and decisions over the last 8 years, I felt I couldn't just walk away. I feel that the job is not yet done for me. Perhaps 2 years in the first warden's shoes will be my swan song, time will tell. With no one running in opposition at this time, the question becomes, what am I doing and how am I going to do it? On specific issues, I will continue to be a proponent for those issues I've supported in the past, such as reduced electrical costs and improved telecommunications via mainland power cable, a safe, locally administered reduction of the deer herd to help reduce the incidence of Lyme disease, the maintenance of a high-quality on-island medical care via the medical center and its wonderful, hard-working staff, and the appointment of a town facilities manager to address and improve the condition of town buildings into the future. As I wrote in the paper, sitting in the center chair, I will endeavor to provide everyone a reasonable opportunity to convey their opinions at the town council meetings while maintaining a civil forum and an efficient use of time and resources. I hope all of you will give careful consideration to your choices for all the council seats. Block Island's future depends on it. Thank you for your consideration. Minute and 58 seconds.
Les Slate.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I've been crying out for a number of years to get on the council, and this is going to be my year. I'm going on, and I just want you to know I don't have an agenda of my own. My agenda is going to be what you people want me to do. Thank you.
Norris Pike.
Hi, everybody. I kind of sitting here with amusement, looking at the faces, and I realize that pretty much most of the folks here already know how they're going to vote. They're just here to see us squirm. But, I look forward to another term on the council as your second warden. I realize, of course, there's no opposition, but I think I'm fairly well qualified to fill the seat, and I look forward to working with the council to develop a more reasonable Block Island. I agree, that we've got some problems and issues to deal with. One of them being the amount of cars and traffic, the transition to the deep water cable, which I'm looking forward to. Net metering improvements for solar in the future, I believe will come about after the cable's in place. I think we'll see a fairly decent amount of stimulus into our economy with the spin-off of that. Controversial, yes, but most of the things that have come about on Block Island are controversial. In the past, when the sewer went in, it was a big controversy. When the town purchased the water company, another controversy. But these are all good things, and you know, when I look at Block Island politics, the local politics, I look at it as a long-term thing. You know, what have we done in the past that makes this a great place to live? And what can we do now to continue to make this a great place to live? You know, we've got some improvements in our medical services building, with a doctor's office coming up. You know, and I'm hoping that bond passes to give us the flexibility to move forward and improve our medical services facility. Number of issues, you know, I think we deal with them as they come along. I don't really have a fixed agenda, and I think it's mostly good judgment and good homework.
I need to call time.
Dealing with people on an even
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris Warfel.
Hi, I'm Chris Warfel, and I was first elected to the town council 2 years ago, and I really had to struggle with whether or not I had the energy to do this again. I ran for the town council initially because after seeing how our government worked, I knew that I had some experience, education that could help improve the efficiencies of the town and how it operates. And so I decided to run again because in the last 2 years, it's been a slog trying to get just minimum things done in the town of Shoreham that would improve the efficiency of government, and provide access to government for the taxpayer. Again, it's been a real tough slog to do that. I don't understand the resistance to that. So I've worked hard to try and open up government for you. I know that we still have a long ways to go. I've been saying to myself and to others that if we did not have the captive customer, that is you, the taxpayer, I think the town of Shoreham would be out of business because we resist so much just trying to improve our basic fundamental operations. And so the next 2 years, I'm going to keep working, if elected, to try and bring better technology to the town of New Shoreham, better energy efficiency to the town of New Shoreham, more accountability in what we have on our list of things to do and how we accomplish it, make sure that we keep a track record, because right now, it's very hard to do that. And I'll stop right there.
Verna Littlefield.
They left off a name. The first name is Amelia. That's what you'll see on the ballot. Anyway, I'm running for council because I think the council needs a squeaky wheel. And when it comes to departments and representatives, state and federal, we haven't been squeaky enough. And that's the only way we're going to get things done out here with the assistance of the state and federal government. And we have to do that because the DEM, the DOT, CRMC, all of them, they ignore us. And we put enough money into all of them that they should be listening to us. And we need to get a hold of our representatives and say, okay, it's time for you to holler and scream and get what you can for Block Island. Thank you.
I've described myself as being a pain in the butt and a stone in the shoe. But one thing I'm not is a clanging bell. That's someone who just complains without contributing a menu of recommendations and possible solutions. I'll drop some names for you. John Brotherhood, Weld Cox. These two gentlemen, who initially were discredited, they understood what was best for Block Island, and they worked hard to achieve their goals. And they had a lot of hurdles, being washer-shores like I am. What we need is a can-do attitude. What I'm going to ask you guys to do is your part and send up as many questions that are unrefined, not sanitary, yes and no if possible, and demand yes and no answers from those at table. I think Block Island and the town governments for well over a decade has made the job harder than it is. It's hard enough. Yeah, I have a long wish list, but I also know how to prioritize. The analogy I make there is, if you go home and make a long, lengthy to-do list for your weekend, you're never, ever going to get it all done. We have to condense, prioritize what the concerns are, and accomplish those. In the paper I mentioned that in the 35 years I've been here, I've only seen 2 really outstanding town councils. That's because they attacked certain issues, and over that 2-year period, or however long it took, they conquered it.
Thank you. Just
The center microphone isn't turned on.
is the center microphone.
Ready to go again?
Okay, if you have a question, just raise your hand and Betty will pick them up and give them to the panel who is posing the questions. So now we will move on. I want to remind you once again to please speak clearly so that we can capture this on the videotape for posterity. I'm going to ask for Lars Trodson to pose the first question to Howell Conan. He will have a minute. Let me just remind you, a minute to answer the question, and then everybody will have 30 seconds to respond to that question. The next question will be posed to Ken Lacoste. He'll have a minute, and everybody else will have 30 seconds, and so forth and so on.
Okay. These questions are coming at you randomly. They're not assigned to anybody specifically, so I'm just going to pick one. Do you support expanding town facilities to include recreational and wellness centers, and how would you finance the construction and maintenance of those facilities?
Recreation for our young people on Block Island has always been a top priority for especially all parents on Block Island. And it's always can use improvement. So I'm not completely sure whether you're referring to recreational facilities for the entire population or the youth. But I certainly support recreation facilities because, as we know, there isn't a heck of a lot to do out here in the wintertime. So as far as financing recreational facilities, I mean, I assume that would be done through fundraisers, grants, possibly bonds.
Okay, same question, Ken Lacoste.
When my boys were growing up, I spent a lot of time serving as the proctor for the rec center. So I know the needs that are there for the young people. And the study that was done recently that came out with the questionnaire and whatnot decided that there is something that's needed, a place for them to go, a place for them to do something. So I would definitely support that. How to finance it would be a matter of what exactly it is we're financing. It depends on what we're financing. But I think we can definitely do better, and I would certainly, be open to any ideas that were brought up.
Les?
Well, you're almost asking for a community center, which has been discussed for many years on Block Island, and they even had a proposal many years ago for a community center where the fire department is today. A meeting place for activities would be a nice thing to have on Block Island.
Morris?
I think, we've supported the rec center in the past, recreation facilities. We can continue to do that. I think one of the proposals this year has been to broaden the horizon of the recreation facilities to bring in the older folks, to get everybody in the town to do more or have more opportunities to do stuff. So, you know, I'm in support, and I think financing this would be either tax-based or grant or contributions.
Thank you, Chris.
With respect to recreation, I think we have the facilities that we need. It's how we access them. The school is a tax-supported entity, and it's really not accessible to most adults here. And we've been trying to get a program in place where adults can come into the school and use recreation facilities here. And like I said earlier, it's been really hard to do this. We haven't been rigorous in making sure that that need, which this council actually has supported, would focus on and deliver that. With respect to wellness, I would just say that we obviously need something like that.
Vernon?
I would support a facility if we could find first the right place for it, and we could get the funding for it. But that's going to be a job out here because there aren't that many people out here that would be able, well, there are a few people that have the money, but we just got to convince them to part with some of it.
Mark?
I think a community center with a pool is a fantastic idea, and I'd certainly support that. I'll reference the school when we expanded that included a gym. I remember Mr. Benson throwing up the first basketball for the first jump ball, and what a delight that was, and what a boost that was for the community. The Paul O'Brien property, you can't walk past there and see what's been done there without highlighting a facility like that. And we built the medical center, we built the new rescue building. A lot of that was done privately. If so, if we need a bond, so be it. I think we need that facility.
Thank you. Alan?
I support expansion of any kind of rec program all across the board for children, for adults as well. I think one of the things I would like to see the rec department do is carry a little bit more of their own weight, figure out ways to do that. I also think that the Large Assets Committee is looking into this to some degree, and I think on that front, it should be a public-private sort of collaboration. So I'd like to see something like that.
Okay, the next question will be posed by Bill Penn to Ken Cost.
Ken, if you support the idea that we need more affordable rental housing on the island, how would you finance these projects?
Well, as we know, there's a tax on the summer rentals that's being used for some housing. I think that's a tough nut to crack. As I mentioned in the paper, you've got a problem of the economics of it. People can make so much money renting their houses out in the summer that it makes it hard to come up with year-round affordable housing. That's a job that I personally don't have a solution for, but I think it's a focus that the housing board should be able to be leaned on or suggested that they take up more strenuously and put it in their line of sight. See if they can target that as something that's needed.
Okay, I'm going to ask the candidates to make sure the microphone is in front of them as they prepare to answer the questions, so we can keep our time going and so everybody can hear. Les Slade.
Low-income rentals in the winter are becoming scarcer and scarcer. And I don't blame the people that are actually renting these things, because I don't blame them. But for the town to get involved and do sort of housing there are also rentals with some kind of grants maybe, or I don't know.
Doris?
I think year-round, predictable rental housing is probably the most needed thing on Block Island for year-round people. It's just so hard for people to find. and if they do find it, to hold on to it through the summer. I think if the Housing Board came in with a proposal that we bonded some dollar value for construction of rental, year-round rental housing, I would support that. There's a great need for it.
Thank you, Chris.
I think what we have right now is because of the generosity of a lot of people who donated land and buildings for affordable housing. I don't think the tax on transactions, property transactions, is going to do it. We need another approach. I was toying with an idea of trying to see if people would sell their houses at below market, if that could somehow translate into a big tax credit that could expand over time or be put into a trust.
Sorry, Amelia.
Thank you. Well, we do need the housing, and like I said, I'd be the squeaky wheel, go after federal grants and state grants, any money you can get anywhere and have people looking for it. I think you get the money for the housing, and I've got a good idea where they can go.
Mark?
Well, federal and state grants are getting harder and harder to obtain. We all know that. The land needed for good, affordable rental has to be in the business district where we can tie into town and water, so we can fully appreciate that spot. We have a dedicated revenue stream. It comes up with roughly 6 figures a year, but it's not enough. And don't take subsidies that are just going to end up being subsidy extortion by handcuffing you for doing what you really want to do out here.
Alan?
I think we have a very competent housing board, and I think I would defer to them, but I recognize that it is an issue. I think rental housing is very important, and I think it's something that the town, for our own purposes, need to be involved in as well.
Howell?
Well, I'll agree with everybody. Year-round rental housing is about as important as you can get. It's sorely overdue and terribly needed. How you finance that, we've got a great housing board that's done a real good job. They've done a fantastic job getting donations, grants, and making the finances work. So I think that the housing board will probably continue to do a great job on that. And however they do it, they should keep doing it. But we definitely need it.
Ken, did you start the question? Sorry, my mistake. Okay, the next question will be posed by Lars Trodson or Leslie.
This is a question from a resident. Regarding the question of the $1.25 million renovation of the doctor's house, are you in favor of spending $475,000 for a new 2-unit residence for interns? If yes, explain why this is necessary after the town purchased a 2-unit home across from the school a few years ago.
I'm not in favor of it, and I think the house right out here across the street would work just fine.
Well, having sat on that committee, I can tell you that we need to house the residents somewhere. And that was part of the initial plan. I realize it's controversial. I think we can, if the bond passes, to reconstruct the doctor's house, and I hope it does. We can do that portion of it first and probably explore the options for the resident housing. I think the Thomas property would have potential, but it is designated for the police.
Chris?
I don't think at this point I'm in favor of the extra $425,000 for the interns. We do have the Thomas property. We have other properties. This has been a very rushed process. We had years to figure this out. And then within 2 months or 3 months, this crisis all of a sudden happened. And I think we need to step back and take a little more time in assessing what the options are here.
Amelia?
Well, I'd have to look into the expenses. I don't go for the for the whole project, for the amount that they're asking for. I think a lot of it's a waste of money because nobody has spent the time to look into what is really needed and what has to be done. And you need somebody that knows what they're talking about, and it's just not happening.
Mark?
I do not want to see the Thomas property used for that purpose. I want to see the Thomas property turned into year-round affordable rental apartments. And as far as a necessary facility for the interns, they're not a luxury at the medical center in the summertime. They're a necessity. If anyone's going up to the medical center on what's supposed to be the doctor's days off, which is the weekend, it's anything but their day off. They're inundated and overwhelmed, and those interns are just a godsend.
Alan?
I think it is time to step back a little bit from that aspect of the project and re-examine it. I'm not sure I support moving anything to the Thomas House either. I think the whole thing needs to be reconsidered. But the housing project that we saw the other day, it was pretty clear that that's not a direction we want to be headed.
Howard?
I think it's pretty clear from the controversies that have developed that we basically need more time. I think this needs to be studied further. I think the entire concept of housing all of the medical professionals that are up there needs to be looked at. We need to look at all the properties available. And I just think we need additional time to study this. I think everybody will calm down once it's vetted a little longer and more information is available. All the options are discovered and looked at. So a little more time to study this, and I think we'll get underway.
Ken?
Let me get this straight. You're damned if you kick the can down the road, and you're damned if you don't kick the can down the road. You're getting confused. Everything was done in an evolutionary process by the town council. We were told we needed to hire a doctor right away. We were told we had to have a good house for the doctor. We were told we had to have housing on site for the interns. We did all that. We were told by another committee that we should have part of the housing for the interns be something that could get income from. We divided it up. We have two structures in that other building. We did everything that we were asked to do, and now we're in trouble for doing it. I support this bond, and I hope you do too.
Okay, the next question.
Les has it.
Let me just remind you again, if you have a question and you've written it down, hold up your hand so your paper can be collected. Next question goes to...
Les hasn't responded.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, this is a follow-up question to Norris. The Health Services has committed up to $200,000 for increased salaries and housing for staff. What are your thoughts about increasing the town's financial support of the health services for these expenses? And if so, would you be willing to increase real estate taxes to fund that support?
I've got some fairly strong feelings about Medical Services Committee. I think they do a great job. I think we need to step back a little bit and look at the Medical Services Committee itself. I felt right along, and I continue to feel, that it needs to be a town committee under the auspices of the town charter. Again, probably controversial, but I think the operations of the Medical Services Committee has come to a point where they're having open meetings, and I'm enjoying every one of those.
Chris?
I actually didn't know that they were planning to do that, so this is news to me. On the town council, I've been trying to be the town council member that only gets information through town council meetings, to be like the one voice that is not influenced by all the various factors as much as possible. I'd like to know where that $200,000 is being spread out and why before supporting that.
Verna?
I kind of have to go along with Chris. I'd like to know where the money's going. I know that we do need to increase the salaries for the medical personnel, but I just don't know where it's going and how it's going to be spent, so I'd have to check into that before I'd say yes.
Mark?
Well, anyone who knows my medical past knows I have a great affection for the medical center. They put me back together so many times. As far as what this is concerned, I'd have to see all the information and study it. But again, that facility and what happens there, I cut my teeth on the medical board when I was on council a lifetime ago, and they were just dynamic. And they really want the best. Yeah, they're stumbling now. But I think we'll be okay. The medical center is a huge part of this community.
Thank you. Alan?
As far as the particular number, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. I think the entire thing, including the buildings, I mean, I think that's part of the problem. But the entire thing, we need to look at a long-range plan on, and be sure that in the future that this is still a viable institution on the island. It's a very important one, obviously.
This is one of these instances where I don't think the town council should micromanage. The Medical Services Board puts a lot of energy into studying these things, countless hours. I'm sure they wouldn't make the recommendation if they didn't feel it was necessary. As far as our staff, our medical staff, I mean, we need good medical staff. They work on far above and beyond the call of duty all the time. And I would go on the recommendations of what Medical Services recommends. If it took a small tax increase to support that, I would personally be in favor of it.
Ken?
Ditto. What else? I'm on the Health Services Board. I sit on it as a town council member. I've been privy to the information that is, much of which is in closed session because of the nature of hiring and whatnot. And the town has entrusted Black Island Health Services to provide medical care for the island. I think they do an excellent job. There's a lot of people that put a lot of time in, and I think that if you want good quality medical care, you have to be willing to pay for it. It's a financial town meeting. Everyone can vote on it. It's not up to one councilor's vote. So you all have a chance to voice your opinion about how you want to spend the money.
Thank you. Les?
The question is, the Health Services has committed up to $200,000 for increased salaries and housing for staff. What are your thoughts on the increases and the town financial support, and would you be willing to increase taxes to pay for that support?
I think that's too much of an increase, and I wouldn't support it.
Okay. Next question.
This is a question from a resident. Is this to Chris? Are we going to Chris?
Yes, to Chris.
As a town councilor, what can you do to lower freight costs?
Yeah.
Well, we need more effective consultants for the rate hearings. We also, I think, we've talked about forming a port authority, which would give us a seat at the PUC, which we don't have. We really are in the periphery of the discussions. We have no standing, really, to speak of. And with that, we have no influence. And that's why we have what we have now. So I would like to see us form some kind of authority that would get us before the PUC. I think that's the best option that we have.
Thank you. Verna?
We need somebody that can negotiate with interstate navigation, somebody that knows something about negotiating and in the best interest of the town. And we just got to find somebody to do it, because never doing it now is not coming across very well, because you can see what's happened.
Mark?
I'm very comfortable with the ownership of Interstate. They provide a lifeline for us. I know I can work with them. I know if we get the right representation, that we can sit down and come up with a better plan. I'm sure of it. Have the previous people done their job? I'm sure they've tried, but I'd like to give it a try.
Yeah, I don't know that I would put this off on the consultant that we've already dealt with. I think the PUC has to take responsibility for the rates. I mean, they're the ones making the final decision. I support Chris's idea of at least looking into some sort of portability. I think that time has probably come for Block Island for portability. So that's something I would be very interested in.
I think it's clear in hindsight that the negotiator was a mistake. I think that the town council jobs are a commitment, and I think anybody up here has the ability to, one, negotiate in good faith directly with Interstate Navigation. If that can't get to a solution, I think that we can represent ourselves at PUC hearings. I'm sure we could divvy up the time responsibilities to get up there. I think a third-party paid consultant is not the answer for any of this.
When this was all going about, or after the process, I did write a letter. I did a letter up asking the governor and the powers that be for more representation at the PUC table. I think we need to work on that. Whether or not a port authority is the way to go, I don't know. We'll have to explore that. We've talked about it in the past. There are other ramifications that go along with it, which we may not want to get into. But we certainly need to negotiate at the PUC level and get up there and get at the table one way or another.
Les?
I don't understand why Interstate lowered the price to bring your car over here and raised the price of the freight. Makes no sense.
It's hard to negotiate with Interstate because we don't get the opportunity to negotiate with Interstate. They make their PUC filing and they deal with the PUC via their attorney. We can hope in the future that Mr. McElroy will retire. That will make it a lot better. Other than that, you know, they are entitled to a fair rate of return, which is what the PUC looks at. And, you know, whether they get it through the freight rates or through the vehicles.
Verna, I'd like to change the subject a little bit, talk about internet access on the island. What are your plans to increase our broadband internet services on the island?
Well, first of all, I'm not really up on internet, and all I can say is it's time for the Residents Association and some of the other organizations on the island to get together and write up a petition to get federal help and to assist us in getting some of the services that we should have out here that all other communities on the mainland already have. And that's also with the electric rates. And we don't get much representation as far as either one of them go. And if we send a petition to our representatives, state and federal, hopefully that will help us out.
Mark?
You're asking this question to someone who just recently mastered the 8-track tape. So, I'm hoping that when we get the mainline cable and the service that will provide will remedy the problem. Other than that, I just think we're buying time trying to take care of this problem.
Well, I would say that House Rep, whoever he or she may be, and the town council can get together with Verizon and the rest of the state and solve the problem, whatever it takes.
Once the fiber optic cable is available on the island, I think we will have the opportunity to expand the service with Verizon and or AT&T. The technology will be explored. Right now they're looking at what's going on at Aquidneck Island, and they have a similar situation where they're maxed out with their capability. We will have a lot more capability once that fiber optic cable is here.
Chris?
I disagree that the cable and its fiber network is going to do really anything for this island. I have worked for a company that laid fiber, and Block Island is really too small to afford building out a fiber network. As Howell said, wireless broadband is here now and actually is technically possible. And that's what we should focus on. I worked with Verizon and Verizon Wireless on this, and that's truly seems to be the technology that's here now.
Okay, our next question for Mark.
Thank you. Several residents have asked about the deer issue, Mark. What is your position on the deer issue, and what do you think of the current plan?
We didn't rehearse this, correct, Lars?
We did not.
Okay. I want the deer eradicated, not reduced. Earlier I said we need a can-do attitude. My dad was a Seabee, just turned 94. Their motto was can-do, comma, the impossible takes a little longer. We have someone at this very table who thinks it's impossible. I don't want to hear that. We have another one who thinks that deer are a resource. A resource for whom? The medical center? The collision services on the mainland? Goose and Garden? It's a health and safety issue, period. Deer should be eradicated as safely, boldly, as quickly, and as productively as possible.
I can agree with Mark to a point, and I think we can all agree to a point. I'm the one I think he referred to that thinks it's an impossible task to eliminate him. I also think it would not produce the desired effects. I also believe that we always hear about how we're a microcosm, so we should be looking for a solution that we can send to the mainland, and killing all the deer on the mainland is never going to happen. So I think that's a problem. But beyond that, I do support the current program, having the local hunters do this and having the herd significantly reduced. But I don't think we need to have this argument about reducing as opposed to eliminating until we get to 30 or 20%. And then we can talk about how much further we need to go.
Dramatically reducing the deer herd has been on the top of everybody's plate for a long time, and I think everybody agrees on that. Whether we exterminate them or not is another subject. But at any rate, I think that however we go about this, using our local resources is the way to do it. I think that the progress has been made recently by modifying seasons and takes and using local hunters. That's the way to do it safely and get it done, and I think we can manage it that way. So personally, I think we're headed in the right direction.
Ken?
I thought he was talking about me, Alan. I'm pretty sure he's talking about me. I've always said I don't think we can kill them all. We'd have to defoliate the island, get the people off, and then just nuke it if you want to do that. Just because of the nature of the island. However, I was the holdout. I'm the one who finally came around and said, okay, let's get as many as we can. And I've been on the council that's finally seems to be getting something done in terms of the bounty on them. We got 400 one way or another last year. If we get another 400 this year, 400 or 500 every year, I think we'll make a good dent in them, and we'll get to our goal of radically reducing them and reducing the incidence of Lyme disease, if not eradicating it. But we've done as much as we can so far, I think. We need to give it a chance.
Les?
The several hunters that we have on the island have been inefficient, and even the cars killing a few of them haven't put a dent in them. We need to bring somebody in, some professionals in, and get rid of the deer.
Doris?
I would be surprised that come next spring that there will be many deer left on Block Island given the current program. I have a lot of faith in what we've put forward, And I think we've just got to let it go and see what happens come spring. We can reassess it then. But I'm expecting a major reduction in the herd this year.
I think Mark could have been talking about me too. When White Buffalo was proposed, I was really, I think, the only person on the town council that was against the White Buffalo plan. I found it dangerous. It was also an anathema to our local hunters, and I could not support it. And I do think it's unrealistic to expect to exterminate the deer herd, given that there are a lot of people that don't want the deer reduced on the island or exterminated. And you cannot ignore their rights. So we have to come up with a realistic plan. I like what we're doing right now.
A lot of those deer end up in my yard, especially hanging from a backhoe. And in the wintertime, the freezer fills up. But I'm not in favor of having off-island hunters come over. They don't know where the houses are. They don't know what's over the next hill. And I think by what they're planning on doing this winter will eliminate a lot of the problems.
Mark. Sorry. Actually, every one of the candidates has now had a question posed to them as the first respondent.
Well, Alan, I'm going to give you the floating
apologize,
one. Sticking with the issue of internet, who should own the fiber optic cables when it's put in? And related, should the town set up a municipal co-op to construct and own the fiber optic system on the island? I told you.
Yeah, I think it's beyond my area of expertise, but I don't know. I'm not sure. I would like to hear from the people who've been talking about the cable, and the EUTG, for example, should weigh in on that before I would make a decision. I think the town should have some control over it, but there are too many things about that I honestly don't know. So to answer that question.
I think the fiber optic cable could be owned by the town, but it certainly shouldn't be managed or maintained by the town. They're clearly not capable of doing that. It may actually be easier to have the ownership in the hands of the carrier, whether that's Verizon or whoever it is. But as far as maintenance and operation and whatnot, the town doesn't have any expertise in that, and that should be done by whoever the carrier is of the broadband.
I agree with Hal's sentiment. I also add that I don't believe the cable. We're not talking about. I think we're talking about a cable that's going to go from the incoming from the state beach to every house on the island. It may just be a matter of getting that signal to us and then using other means to disseminate it across the island more efficiently. And I think the town should maintain some control, quote unquote, but as Hal said, the feasibility of it in terms of the dollars and cents would probably be to some degree turned over to the provider and to a vendor, just as we do everything else, you know. But we want to maintain some sort of superficial control.
Les.
I think that Verizon or the provider should take care of it.
I'm sure the town should own the fiber optic cable and lease it out or hire individuals to run it. But like the sewer and the water and other utilities on the island in the past, it's demonstrated it can be problematic if individual private companies have it. I think the town should maintain ownership and either lease it out or hire someone to run it. And again, the technology will be on the island, whether I don't believe we'll fiber optic the entire island, just with repeaters.
Chris?
Maintaining fiber network is pretty expensive, especially in this case. If the cable gets compromised by towing, breaking it, and that gets repaired, the fiber transmission rate goes down quite a bit. So I think unless we understand what the maintenance costs are of undersea fiber or even underwater fiber,
we'd be foolish to take that on.
Verna?
I have to agree with what Ken said. We should have some control over it, but I'm not sure just what the ramifications are if we do. I'd have to look into that.
Mark?
Again, it's not my field. It seems like something like this should be privatized, but we should have a seat at the table so we can decide just what should and, more importantly, what shouldn't be done with it.
Okay, I want to apologize to Alan for my oversight. Betty tells me I'm getting increasingly forgetful, and I think we have ample evidence of that fact. Now, for the next session, I think we're going to start the questions again with Alan, and I'm going to suggest that each person have 1 minute to answer, so that it's fairer and that everybody will have equal time, because I don't think we'll get through the whole list again. So I believe it's Lars.
You ready, Alan? This is a question from a resident again. Our town feels increasingly fractured, especially over the issue of health services. What steps would you take to heal the community?
Well, I think that we're all in this together. I think we all just need to sit down and hash this out. I think everyone has the best intentions. I don't question anybody's motives in anything that they're doing out here. I think we have great committees, and I think we're making progress. It's always been an issue out here. It's kind of a blood sport, but I think we'll survive it. I don't know.
How?
Well, medical services had a rough go at it. They had a tough time with a big problem that they dealt with, and the town stepped up to the plate. I think time has gone by and it's healed, personally, and I think that's what it takes sometimes in these times of controversy. I'm not sure there's a specific overt action that is necessary. I think that the healing process has started, if not all completely gone by with medical services. They're moving on to new projects and better things, and it's just like family practically. Sometimes you get in an argument with your brother or sister, and it takes time, and then you all get back to business. And I'm not, like I said, I don't think there's a specific process or thing we need to undertake to affect a healing process in this matter.
Ken?
I like your comment, Alan, of blood sport. It's good for business at the medical center. I think a lot of the curing or the healing process, if one is actually needed, can be achieved through listening and through understanding and through some patience and through people just getting back to what we were like when we built the medical center. Verna and I were on that board years ago when it first was built. We got Greg, Nancy Greenway, and several other fine people, so many of whom are probably in this room right now. And there was a lot of compassion, and there was a lot of love put in that building. And I think if we just step back a little bit, let our tempers cool down, let that love come through, everything will be fine.
Les?
I don't see too much room for improvement. There's some things that need to be questioned, some of the expenditures that they want to make, and some of the building things that they want to do need to be questioned and looked into further before anything is approved.
There still exists a little bit of controversy with medical services, but I think all in all, headed in the right direction. I think the wounds have healed. There's always some sort of controversy in this town, and that happened to be one for a while, and we'll be moving along. We'll find a new one. But I think all in all, we're going in the right direction, and I think they're going in the right direction, and we'll look forward to working with them to move forward in the future. I can see some problems probably with rebuilding the doctor's house, but when we get that done, I think we'll be in pretty good shape up there.
I do think it's a very hard-working group of people at the medical center. But this process has become pretty political, and maybe that's inevitable. Well, if blood's for it, maybe we'll find something else if we ever get this one resolved. It's just seems to be the island way, or maybe human nature. We're not going to be able to force reconciliation. I think what will happen is if the medical center can improve its services, if its public image starts developing more positively, I think people will be coming back and supporting it. It's going to take time, though. It can't be forced.
It takes time for all wounds to heal, and the medical center should know that. Above everybody else. So it's just going to take time, and everybody's just got to decide to work together. That's it.
I was part of that huge group that was very upset over a year ago about what took place up at the medical center. And then I looked down that long table of all the board members, and every one of them was so, I have a story for each and every one of them for what they've done so well for Block Island. And I know they have only good intentions. Still can't understand how they unanimously went the route they did. But that's past. If anything I learned through all of my medical mulligans is that you can't change things in the past. You got to move on, and that's what's being done at the medical center.
Okay, so Hal, I guess you're the next person to respond to a question. What are your feelings about the BIPCO distribution upgrade? Do you support it? And how can we as a community encourage them to move forward with a project that's been on the planning board stage for many years?
Actually, I'm completely against the distribution upgrade. It's totally unnecessary. Given enough time, I could demonstrate that through facts and figures. It's science, and it's math, and it's engineering. BIPCO got a bad rap from many, many years ago when the distribution system was not up to par. This was before the substation that was built and the regulators were put on the lines. But I can tell you now for a fact that all of the electrical distribution on Block Island meets ANSI standards, which is what the PUC uses to regulate electrical utilities. If it's meeting ANSI standards, it's not a discussion. It's over, and it does. So we do not need to spend $3.5 million or $4 million on an upgrade that we don't need. And once again, you can take my word for it, but I'm willing to demonstrate it and show the facts that can save you a lot of money. We could use that money on a lot of other things than an upgrade that we don't need.
Ken?
I think that we have to listen to the experts. I don't usually have them sitting right next to me on certain subjects, but at least not right next to me. But if the upgrade distribution is indeed necessary, then it should be done, because we need to make the electricity that we get and use better in terms of the supply, in terms of the way it's delivered to the house. I know some of us in the audience have experienced problems with electricity delivery to their appliances and whatnot. So if it's necessary, it should be done. We should support it. But I always have an open ear to other opinions. Les?
I'm unaware of the unnecessary expensive upgrade, and why are we even considering an upgrade if we're going to be getting a cable? And one way or the other, we should get a cable.
Yesterday at a meeting, we were talking about line losses with the EUTG, and I think we're in the neighborhood of 12% line loss. The voltage probably fine all the way around the island at the tail end. I would like to see the distribution system upgraded to a point where there wasn't quite as much line loss. At 12%, burning 1 million gallons of diesel fuel, that's 100,000 gallons of fuel a year lost. I'd like to see it undergrounded in a lot of places. Block Island claims to be one of the most beautiful places. I think getting rid of hundreds of utility poles would go a long way towards making it a lot better. So that's where I sit.
The utility used to claim 15%, and after their line losses, and after their upgrade, they were down to 12%. And the industry standard is 5% or less. So as Nora said, we're burning a lot of fuel, wasting it. I have to disagree with how I work all over the island, like he does, with renewable energy technology, and we have to specify the most bulletproof equipment that's made out there. We have to look for the equipment that has the highest operating tolerances, because Block Island Power, it's not good power. We actually, with our technology, have a cleaner source of power. So I support the upgrade, but there are other ways to achieve this, and but if we can lower the line losses down to 5%, that's going to be a tremendous savings to the ratepayer.
Bernard?
All I know about electricity is when you plug a lamp into the wall socket and you turn the light on, it comes on. The only thing that bugs me is when I get the bill at the end of the month and the fuel surcharge is twice the amount of the energy charge. And if the upgrade does anything to lower that, I would be for it. But other than that, I have no idea what they're talking about when they are considering an upgrade, what they're going to do. And I need to know that.
Mark?
Anybody who knows me knows I'm pretty frugal. I don't go to one room without turning out the light in the room I've just come from. I'm not an engineer, not an electrician, I'm a plumber's assistant. So probably not being privy to all of what I'm just learning now, I would just become a quick learner and dive into whatever the proposal is and make my decision on the merits or lack thereof.
Alan?
I was at the same meeting that Norris referenced, and I was surprised actually when Dave Milner made that same point that Howell made, that the power is actually pretty up to par. He conceded that there were a few places on the island where that wasn't the case, but overall, he said he would show you almost anywhere that it meters out right. He did not, however, address the line loss, and I think that's a significant issue and a reason on its own for looking into distribution upgrades.
Okay, I'm going to suggest one more question, and then we'll have closing statements.
Okay. This is a three-parter that requires very brief answers from a resident. How many Chamber of Commerce meetings have you attended in the last year? How many Tourism Council meetings have you attended? And yes or no, do you know the difference between the two?
Zero, zero, and yes, because I was actually on the Tourism Council for a number of years.
Would you repeat that, please?
Sure. How many Chamber of Commerce meetings have you attended in the last year? How many Tourism Council meetings have you attended? And yes or no, do you know the difference between the two?
It's 0, 0, and I'm not sure.
I've been at 2 of each because they've been at our meetings and we've had joint meetings. So I know I've been at a couple. I do know the difference between the two.
I have the same score as Norris because they do come to the town council, and so it's 2-2, and yes.
Can I change my answer?
You cannot retract a statement unless in writing.
None, and yes, I do know the difference.
Let's see, the two instances I've been involved in, I'm a member of the chamber because I drive a cab. I had a problem with the Tourism Council a year or two back when they wanted Buddy Cianci to be their spokesperson in some way, shape, or form. That made me so irate. But I've finally gotten over that. I think we should all, whether we're a member of it or go to the meetings, we're ambassadors to Block Island. I know when someone gets in my cab, and I know it sounds corny, but I welcome them to Block Island. I say, you've been herded like cattle for the past hour. Your vacation starts right now. So when they leave Block Island, hopefully they'll say, if you do nothing else when you go to Block Island, take a taxi ride with one of the cab
drivers. 0, 0, and yes, I know the difference.
I haven't been to any of their meetings, and I do know the difference.
Okay, it's time for closing statements, and I'm going to reverse, and I'm going to go to the other end of the table and begin with Mark. And because we are doing fairly well on time management, I'm going to ask you each to take up to 2 minutes.
Okay, I won't need that much. My history in the past 25 years is I've been on boards and committees from A to Z, from affordable housing all the way to zoning. So I have a lot of experience, even to school teaching here at Block Island School. So I know how things work and how things aren't working. My time spent on the rescue squad taught me that you really have to prioritize. It's more of a triage out there. We can't make long lists of things to do, and that's our problem on Block Island. I think we make our job harder than it is. Let's condense it and remedy. I mean, take pride in actually not just talking about an issue that has become a challenge and is now a problem, but remedy it. Dickie Kiley, perfect example. He saw the problem with affordable housing a decade or so ago and didn't say, let's talk more about it. He said, let's go upstate. Let's draft legislation. Let's get a dedicated revenue stream. Let's really address this problem. And we did. We have to do things like that. Like the deer, make the deer problem go away. I want to see the D word off the agenda after X amount of years. It's just wasting our time.
Verna.
If I get elected, I'm going to be the squeaky wheel for the island, to the representatives that we have on the mainland, all of the departments, federal and state, to get things done for us. And that's what I intend to do.
Chris.
I agree with Mark that a list just for a list's sake is pointless. But there is a lack of organization in this town in how we identify problems and approach to solve them. And so some of us started keeping a list 2 years ago of issues that we thought had to be addressed. And with that effort, we identified a lot of problems and could monitor how we were moving towards resolving them, or in most cases not resolving them, and that's valuable information. So I brought my list tonight just so I could refer to it, and there's 60 items on this list, and that is a lot of things. But if we prioritize them, if we could get 10 of them accomplished in a year, actually for Block Island that would be a huge thing. So I do think that I'm trying to bring that organization going down that path because it does bring results.
Norris?
First of all, I'd like to say that I think the town, all in all, is in great shape, and we're going in the right direction. We have a number of issues juggling at all times. We try to deal with all of them. We try to prioritize. We're going to continue to do that. We keep an open mind, and I need to fix a social faux pas that I had with my wife, and I want to thank her for putting up with all the meetings I have to go to and all the meetings I'm going to have to go to. And my wife Susan is fully supportive of me, and I will support Block Island fully too.
Folks, this is going to be my year. I'm going to go into the council. And I won't rest until I get some answers. The questions that we all have, and I'll be on the inside. And if I can't get them on the inside, I don't know how we're going to get them. But I'll try my darndest to be your representative and carry on your agenda. It's going to be about you and what you want me to do, and not my own agenda. I'm going to strictly do.
Lastly, though it may seem moot, I would greatly appreciate your vote next Tuesday. Thank you.
I'd like to just backtrack on one thing on the line loss issue on the power. By the engineer's own report, it's a 90-year payout, which obviously doesn't make any sense. So once again, that money could be well spent elsewhere. I don't think anybody's going to wait 90 years, line loss or otherwise. On to other things. One thing, and that's a good example of how I think decisions could be improved, is more research. I think the council members need more documentation, more facts, more figures, and more time to solidly research subjects so they can make decisions based on facts and more information and not on hearsay and speculation. One pet project that I've always wanted to see undertaken is the issues in Old Harbor. I think we can have a full-time police contingency, full-time crossing guards, maybe an additional crossing spot, traffic control, full-time cleanup of the tippy cams and the visitor center. And how are we going to pay for this? We're going to pay for that with $150,000 that we currently collect already from the head tax on the ferry. It's already paid for. It's actually by state legislation, enabling legislation, is supposed to be in a restricted fund. It goes into the general fund. We don't know where it's spent. I think it should be spent in Old Harbor, which is where it's meant to be spent, and we could do a tremendous job of improving Old Harbor. One thing I'd like to do to help meeting availability to everybody and also reduce costs because of our attorneys and other professionals that have to travel here is I would try to lobby for town council meetings to be held on Mondays at noon instead of at 7 and 8 o'clock at night. It's more convenient for all the professionals that come. It's more convenient for people that have to come over here, bring experts over. The meetings and committees that have changed their meeting times to earlier in the day have had a tremendously positive result in response to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming as well, and thank Byra and the Block Island Times for hosting this. And I think it's interesting that someone would have a list of 60 problems. I really don't see us in that bad a shape. And I think some people look at the donut and some people only see the hole. I think we're in pretty good shape, and I think the problems that we have are manageable problems, and I think that what we need is reasonable people working together to get some things done. But I think the council, I have no problems with the way the last council managed things. I think that they've done a very good job, and I'd like to thank Kim as well while I have the opportunity. And we'll see how everything settles out on next Tuesday. Thank you very much.
On behalf of Byra and the Block Island Times, I want to first thank the candidates for participating. I want to thank our questioners and our timekeeper for their efforts. And I want to thank all of you for attending. As we switch to the next part of our program, I'm going to ask the candidates to the council candidates to take a seat if they wish to stay. If anybody else wishes to leave, I ask you to do so quietly so we can bring Blake and Donna up to the front. And let me just leave you with one thought. When Lincoln was president, there wasn't a very strict Secret Service, and people actually sat outside